Hello, everyone, and welcome to Appointments Live. For those joining us for the first time, we are United We. United We advances all women's economic and civic leadership to make meaningful change. We are the evidence-based research solution to increasing gender equity and civic leadership. And we're here to encourage you on your civic leadership journey, no matter where you are in that journey. My name is Katie Buckingham. I'll be hosting our time together today, and Amy, my colleague, will be on the chat during our time. So ask questions, please engage. Don't be shy. We're just so excited to have all of y'all here. And so while we get started, to kind of warm things up, we'd love it if you just go ahead and share with us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, your name, all of that good stuff. And Amy will be monitoring that. So when I first started exploring civic leadership, I didn't even know that local boards. Are we having some sound issues? Hang on, y'all. Just All right, hopefully we're back in action. So like I was saying, when I first started exploring civic leadership, I didn't know that boards and commissions even existed. And I knew that I wanted to get involved and engaged in my community in some way. And I had looked at volunteer board service, but really was more interested in the true civic engagement piece. And so I just did a quick Google search and happened to find out my city and the boards and commissions that were available. And so I just submitted my name. It was a fairly simple process. And then honestly, kind of forgot all about it because I don't know if you know, but the government tends to move a little bit slowly. And so it wasn't until about a year later that I got a call and they said, hey, do you want to be on this local board? And I was so excited at the time. But I remember walking into that boardroom with a dozen seasoned professionals. And at the time I was in my mid-20s, and I felt so out of my depth. And I would have been so excited to have had something like United We and a network of women championing me and reminding me that I do belong at that table. And so I'm so excited that y'all are here today. You have this resource at your fingertips, and you're going to get to hear from some incredible women who have also been on this journey and are at different stages now. First, we're going to start with Wendy Doyle. She is our fearless CEO of United We, and she's really leading the charge on breaking down barriers for women in economic leadership and civic engagement. She works tirelessly to advance research and action in these areas, and so we're so excited that she's here. Speaking of barriers, I don't know if you all caught this news segment. This was a couple of weeks ago, but it caught my eye because I don't tend to see a whole lot about construction and childcare in the same article. And so the headline obviously reads, the construction industry wants to hire more women, but childcare barriers are getting in the way. And it features several women who were in dead-end jobs and were really interested in this apprenticeship program. If they can make it through the 2-year program, and that's a big if, their earning potential skyrockets to like somewhere between $50 and $75 an hour with upward room for growth. But obviously from the title, each of the women featured had some significant issues with childcare. One woman shared that every single night and day, she had somebody different watching her child from her group of friends and neighborhood. And another woman said that she gave up breastfeeding because she just felt like the long-term benefits outweighed those immediate benefits. And I know that United We is really passionate about lots of these issues, including childcare, and are working in several efforts right now, including a study in partnership with the Kauffman Foundation. Wendy, again, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We know your time is precious. And I just wonder, is it true that women who have to take even a short leave of absence from work due to temporary childcare crises will learn less upon returning?
Katie, it's great to be with you, and it's great to see everyone joining us today. And the answer to the question is yes, that is true. According to the U.S. Department of Treasury's 2021 report on childcare, economists Claudia Golden and Larry Katz found that for college-educated women, even 15 years after graduation, an 18-month break in work was associated with a significant decrease in earnings. 41% for those with an MBA, 29% for those with a JD or PhD, and 15% for those with an MD. So, our work is, working to advance all women's economic and civic leadership. And we recognize that childcare is a significant barrier for women across all industries. This article specifically was interesting with the construction industry, where we know that women are breaking the glass ceiling and jumping into the construction industry. And we're doing our part to look at what the childcare challenges are, especially for opening up a facility. So we have research that will be coming out later this year, looking at what we can do as an organization to lean into this primarily women-driven workforce in the childcare sector. So the demand is already difficult to meet, and we are hoping that with this research that we'll be able to address some of the challenges with that. So some of the key things I just wanted to update the audience this week here in the Midwest. We are wrapping up Missouri legislative session, where we have been actively advocating for childcare tax credits, just as one simple solution to an overall big challenge in the childcare sector. So again, we have a lot going on. We hope our audience will stay tuned and follow us around this important research study that we are doing, and look forward to some next steps. Thanks again, Katie, and back to you.
Great. Wendy, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really encouraging to see that y'all are doing the boots on the ground work in these spaces, and not just childcare, but like you said, other spaces as well. It's interesting, as I was kind of prepping for this morning, I was scrolling through my LinkedIn and I found a brand new report, and I'm going to read a little bit from this. So I apologize, I'm reading, but I just thought it was so interesting. So it is, even if this issue isn't impacting you personally, it's definitely impacting your neighbors, your community, and your Congress members. So in fact, yesterday, the Vote Mama Foundation, who I haven't heard of, but Wendy, you mentioned that you've had great conversations with them. Well, they released a brand new report on reaching proportional representation in Congress. So apparently there's been a baby boom in Congress, in our 118th Congress, but it's not what you think. It's not the women, it's the men. What? Well, nearly 25% of Congress members are dads of minor children, but less than 7% of our female Congress women are moms of minor children. And so the dads are getting to, have the space and the support, which is wonderful, to serve on Congress, but the moms obviously don't. And, it's true that there are far more men. You might be saying, well, there's a lot more men in Congress than women. Yes, that's true. It's also a problem. It's true. But even still, for the members who are parents, when you compare both, dads outnumber moms 9-1, which I thought that was fascinating. And so this data is so important to the work that United We is doing. And while the report doesn't give a reason for this massive gap, I think we can infer that childcare is probably a pretty core driver in the gap that we're seeing in Congress. And so that's something that folks are paying attention to. So lots of food for thought there, lots of things to think about. While you're doing that, let's test your knowledge a little bit and take a pop quiz. And let's see if we can, and I'll read off the questions for everyone. So what is, just a fun little thing, the estimated yearly value of all paid childcare services in this country? Go ahead and answer those. Oh, I love watching the polls. It's so fun to see it go. I'm gonna move it over here. And then yes, the average house, this is the second question, the average household spends what % of its total annual income on childcare? And if any of you are parents or have friends who are parents, I'm sure you've probably heard them lament the cost of childcare before. So if you guys will answer that, this is so fun. All right, I'll give you like 10 more seconds to answer these. All right, should we end the poll? I'm looking over because my fearless colleague Amy is the one running it over here. All right, let's see what do we have. Oh, you guys are pretty smart. Obviously. So yeah, you totally got the number one right. It is $60 billion annually that we are spending on childcare in the United States. And that is just a wild number to me. So you guys had that right on the nose. And actually you overestimated the second question. But even still, that 13% is 7 percentage points higher than what DHHS says is affordable for childcare. So either way you slice it, we're spending a lot of money on childcare. And so there's the bottom line is there's a lot of facets to this problem here, right? And so United We this is one of the issues that they're really in tune to and really working on. So we need more women like you in leadership to help address these barriers and challenges and assumptions. And we are so fortunate to have 3 more women with us today who are doing just that at the local level. They're actively overcoming barriers and leading their communities as we speak now. You know, I had the privilege of meeting each of these women over the month of April virtually. And I got to hear their stories, and they're truly remarkable. So we get to hear a part of those stories today, but I highly encourage you to listen to their full interviews, which will be made available very soon on the United We website. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to send out 1 or maybe 2 of them via a link in a follow-up email after today, but stay tuned for those you don't want to miss the full story. Also, if you have any questions in mind for our panelists today, please don't be shy. Please enter them in the chat. We'll do our best to kind of synthesize them, see if there's any common questions, and we'll probably get to 2 to 3 of them. Do not fret if we don't get to your question. We will do our best to answer those in later content. So let's meet our panel. So Dr. Nkosi Rodriguez is a speech language pathologist, developmental specialist, and owner of Clearview Speech and Consulting in Fort Worth, Texas. Leaning on her 18+ years of experience working with individuals across the lifespan in clinical, non-clinical, and hospital settings, Nkosi is a proud appointee of the Fort Worth Committee on Persons with Disabilities, where she works to ensure that all residents of Fort Worth have equitable access to their city. Our next panelist is Monica Curls. She has been a longtime civic leader in Kansas City, where she was recently elected to the board of directors for the Kansas City Public Schools. She also serves as a commissioner for the Housing Authority of Kansas City and is a board member of the Jacob L. and LFC Luce Foundation. Monica is also an active member of the Junior League, where she sits on the board as its director of finance. When not serving her city, Monica manages government compliance for Terracon, an engineering company based out of Olathe, Kansas. Welcome, Monica. And then finally, we have Angela Breer. She's the founder and chief dot connector at Dot Strategies, a strategic marketing company helping connect the dots to strategically put your ideas into best practice. As a Hispanic business owner, Angela is skilled in cultivating relationships, storytelling, project management, and sticking to timelines and deadlines. Her ability to think creatively could be considered her secret power. And now she's using that secret power as an appointee of the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Advisory Board for the city of Wichita. Ladies, welcome. What an honor to have you. All right, I am going to, forgive me, but I'm going to switch my screens here so I can see your lovely faces and actually look at you. And we're just going to dive in with some questions. So Monica, if it's all right, I'd love to start with you. To kick us off, when we chatted last, you shared some really cool early memories of civic leadership. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like I said, my name is Monica Curls. Here in the Kansas City area, I come from a political family. So civic engagement was kind of groomed into us at an early age. And so, you know, some of my earliest memories are all about kind of political engagement and civic engagement. I think the story I told you was about, I remember being little, you know, being at a polling location, passing out literature for my dad on election day. And so, you know, I was probably like 3 or 4 and I would say, vote for my daddy. And so I'm pretty sure I won the election because I was adorable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely instilled in me from an early age that we had a responsibility to our community and to help make it better set a foundation for, opportunities and success for everyone in our community. So I am honored to be able to continue to strive for that in some of the boards and commissions that I serve on.
That's great. And I do want to, I'm going to jump around a little bit here because I love your story. When we were chatting earlier, I asked you how you came to know about United We, and I think you mentioned that you were in the room when Sly James announced the Appointments Project. Can you share a little bit about what he said there?
So I don't remember I wasn't in the room, but my mother was on the city council at the time
Okay.
that he announced the Appointments Project. And, one of the stories he would always tell is, of course, people want to talk to the mayor. And so he would go to address like a board or a commission or some organization. And he'd walk in and if he didn't see that there were women in the room or there were people of color in the room, he would be like, okay, I'll come back when you all, this population of this board reflects, the population of the city. And, he, and I know Joni Wickham is on the call as well. They worked tirelessly to really promote and get people involved in the Appointments Project. And I love to see the fruits of that labor and how it is reflected in the boards throughout the Kansas City area.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Shifting to Angela Breer is with us. I think you were also influenced somewhat by your parents' civic engagement, different, I believe, not so much on the elected side. Can you share a little bit more about kind of your upbringing with civic engagement and how that's influenced you?
I can. So my parents were always involved. My mom served on different boards, different things within the school district, within the church, all of these areas. My dad had a passion as well for it. But then even going back before that, my grandparents, they fought pretty hard for the Mexican community that they were from and that they represented. And so I think seeing it from a young age, it just kind of instilled in me that you can get involved in a variety of ways. And even going back to childhood, I was involved in 4-H. And so I think some of those foundational things that you learn in the program, it kind of laid the groundwork. And then I have a really big heart for the nonprofit space, and I've worked in that space. So I think it's kind of, you give back and you get involved where it makes the most sense for you.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think a key takeaway I hope that you guys will walk away with is that there is a place for you to fit in, regardless of your skills, your time, and your talents. Moving to Nkosi, Dr. Rodriguez, you currently serve on the Committee on Persons with Disabilities. And I love your story and why you decided to choose this board.
Absolutely. So as she said, my background is in speech language pathology. And I think what spurred me in that direction is a friendship with a young lady who had what then was known as Asperger's syndrome, but now we just call it autism spectrum disorder. So very high level, we engaged together. Our parents were friends. And so that was just an opportunity for me to interact with someone who had a different learning style, for instance, or different social skills and communication. And I think my temperament sat well with her temperament, in that I was very patient and just able to, accept her for who she was, basically. And so her parents saw that. And so as a result, we became friends. And then over time, I began to engage more with people who had different learning experiences or abilities. And as a result, that piqued my interest in my field and wanting to help people who have a disability, for instance, or some type of learning difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, all of you have had I think influences from childhood. I think we all do, right? That sort of influence our pathways. But all of you are also incredibly successful women. And, Monica, you're an elected official. Not everyone has the pedigree that the three of y'all have. And so, Monica, I'll start with you. What would you say your advice is for women who are maybe feeling like, well, I don't have the skills to do this, or I don't have the degree to do this?
I think the one thing I would definitely say is that the most important thing, one, the passion for whatever the work is. So, if you are passionate about, childcare, working with those organizations, volunteering with those organizations, seeing your passion. And I think one thing that's happening with a lot of boards and commissions right now is they're recognizing that they need different perspectives. Like not everybody can be, you don't want all of the same thing. You want all PhDs with a certain background and a certain pedigree. You want people who have different perspectives. And I think one thing that a lot of boards are recognizing right now is you not only need people who can help with whatever the like funding or something like that. You also sometimes need the people who are the recipients of those services to also be reflected on your board. I know for the Housing Authority of Kansas City, by mandate, whoever the chair of our residential service, like each of our facilities has kind of a homeowners association, if you want to call it like that, for that particular facility. And so some of them are members of our commission. And once again, it's so important to have their perspective as well. And even though you might not have the degrees or things like that, that perspective is still really important, especially if you're on a board that's actually coming up with some of those solutions. And so I would definitely say that I wouldn't hesitate just because you don't have a certain pedigree or a certain number of degrees. But I think showing that passion and showing that commitment is just as valuable.
Absolutely. That actually leads me to a question that I asked all three of you in our individual time together and Angela, I'll kick this over to you because of the board that you serve on, which is the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Advisory Board. How do you make sure that the right folks are at the table and that no one is missing from the table?
I think it's a very important topic, and one of those that not everyone can always sit at the table because sometimes it's limited to 12 seats, or it's appointed by one commissioner and the mayor and all of these different parts. So I think for me personally, it's my role to consider who's not at the table, to consider what voices aren't being heard, and then think of ways to either bring them into the conversation or, throughout the community. We all kind of represent different areas, different backgrounds, different perspectives. So it's bringing that to the table. I think one of the biggest things is keeping in mind that the topics may be kind of big, or it may be a really in-depth type of conversation or issue you're pushing, just like with this diversity board. But it's important that you keep in mind those who aren't there and find ways to bring them in. And knowing that for me, my appointment is only a certain term. Who can I encourage or have sign up for the next round that does provide a different seat and a different perspective?
I love that. Yeah. So trying to tee up the next sort of generation, right, of board members. So, and I'm gonna keep you on the hook for a minute, Angela. In the work that you do, how does this actually show up in the decisions that are being made for your city, the decisions that your board is making, or the advice that they're giving? How does it actually work?
I think for this example, so I was appointed by my district leader within the city, if you will. And for us, we worked on a collective plan, a strategic plan for the city. And we spent probably close to a year building that strategic plan. So some of it, like you said earlier, it's not fast. It's hard work. The other part is it's free work, if you will. Like we're all giving of our time. So it just moves a little slower than what we're probably used to in the business world. But in the same time, the business world sometimes feels like it moves really slow too. So it's one of those processes. But forming that strategic plan and then being able to present it to the city council, and the city council and others within the city, the HR department, saying, this is one of the best strategic plans that we have seen, and we are able to dive into that work. It really gives you that momentum and that energy to say, this is why we do it. This is how, the process, all of those things. And for me, I'm a big believer that without a policy in place, it is easy to not happen. It's easy to get pushed aside, and the next group comes in and it doesn't live out. So policy in motion is kind of one of my favorite things to work on.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that sort of jogged me. I'm gonna put Nkosi on the hook. I don't know that we talked about this question, but you mentioned this is free work. Y'all are volunteering your time, and you have lives and a lot of other stuff going on. So Nkosi, how do you balance? I mean, you're a business owner. I think two of the three of you are, if not all three of you. You're a business owner. You've got clients and patients, and you're super involved in your community. So how are you balancing doing all of that and doing it well?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, it might be a little different in the sense that I'm able to do a lot of things virtually and also pre-record, for instance, courses that I'm giving out, whether it's for people locally or overseas and working with parents. So that helps me quite a bit. I have a lot of support with my husband and with my family, as far as my mother-in-law and my parents. So, and I know that's not the case for everyone. Everyone's not able to do so. So I understand why, like, the child care policy element is so important for most women. So I would say that I'm a bit of a minority in that sense. So I'm able to field my work a little bit more easily than most people. I'll say that. So yeah. It's not quite as difficult for me.
That's great and tremendous. Then we get to benefit, your city gets to benefit from your time and talents as well. So shifting a little bit, I want to ask you, the three of y'all, actually, I'm going to ask y'all the same question this time as opposed to pinging, but I'll start with you, Dr. Rodriguez. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? Which I feel like is something that, well, at least I've experienced. I'm not going to project onto our audience today, but I felt it before. And how did you navigate your way through that?
Honestly, I haven't felt imposter syndrome. I just, I know that there's a learning curve no matter what you do. And I'm comfortable with that learning curve. And I'm comfortable with that disequilibrium even. And so my expectation of myself, of course, is high. However, what I try to do is to go ahead and equip myself. Anyone can do that. You don't have to have a doctorate to do that. You don't have to, have a master's. You don't have to be a professional even. Everyone can learn. And so whenever we look at that, it's like, go through and engage with your different policymakers. There's so many even online opportunities where you can observe different discussions going on. Lots of articles that you can read to equip yourself. So I just believe that one can equip themselves over time to be competent in that role. And it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, so we have to, but, we're trying not to. We're trying to make the least amount of mistakes possible. So don't get me wrong, but we have to feel comfortable with that and being able to improve and grow, and just know that the more practice we get, the better we become. Maybe not perfect, but better.
Yeah, that discomfort and that not just the discomfort, but the acceptance of, hey, I only know what I know, and I'm going to know better and do better. And it's okay that it takes time to do that. I think that can be really hard when, you're already feeling like you're starting from behind. And so you don't feel like there's that room or that grace to grow into something. But there is. And unfortunately, I think we have to make that for ourselves. And so I love that. When she first gave that answer, y'all, I was like, yes, like I felt a little bit like I was in church, because it was, I just thought it was so powerful. I also would love to hear the same question from Monica, who I'm pretty sure has a whole lecture on this topic. So Monica, can you share with us a little bit about imposter syndrome and your kind of thinking through that?
Yeah, so I'm not going to give the whole lecture, but yes, I've definitely experienced imposter syndrome. And I think one of the, just this last half, the second half of 2022, I was looking into pursuing a PhD, and I already have undergrad and 2 master's degrees, but I was like, well, I need a PhD because that way people will listen to what I have to say. And I need all the letters behind my name before they'll do that. And part of that was just imposter syndrome. It was that I'm not good enough yet for me to say something and the people actually find value in that. And ended up, you get little ads on Facebook. And so it was doing an ad on looking at an ad on Facebook about doing a TED Talk. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll try and do a TED Talk. I'll listen to this webinar. And at the end of the webinar, they set up an appointment to help you with this. And what it really was a sales pitch for you to pay this guy who was talking about how I have no degrees, I just have a high school diploma and I can tell you how to do a TED Talk. And he wanted you to pay him $10,000 to set you up to do a TED Talk. And this is someone with no degrees, and here I am planning to spend the next 5 years of my life uprooting everything to pursue a PhD. And this Yahoo's out here charging $10,000, and I have a depth of experience and all kinds of things. And I'm sitting here thinking I'm not enough. And at that point I was okay, I'm gonna table the PhD maybe later, but not right now. But what I am gonna do right now is stop getting in my own way. And I'm gonna recognize that I am good enough. I have what I need and I have the passion behind it to make a difference, in my community and say what I need to say and be heard. And I think once I got out of my own way, I was able to really recognize other opportunities that came to me to be able to express myself, to be able to follow a passion. That's one of the things that really led me to run for the school board. Because I just was sworn in 2 weeks ago. So that's also a very new thing. But that's part of that is getting out of my own way. Stop thinking I'm not good enough, recognizing the skills that I have and the perspective that I bring to the table. And just, being confident enough in that to be able to go ahead and make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Getting out of, I think it was Nkosi and I that connected a little bit over we talked about our Enneagram because we have I'm an Enneagram 3 and it's this achiever thing. And it really is more personal and internal. And, you get in your own head. And you're right, you are qualified. You don't need that. And sometimes you do. If you're going to go do surgery on someone, then,
yeah,
please
I'm not operating on anybody.
Right, exactly. And obviously, congratulations being elected to the school board. That's a big deal and being sworn in. And so you very clearly are qualified to do this type of work. And so I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep you on here. We had someone, a question that I think relates to this. Repeating the mantra, I guess this is maybe from earlier in this person's life, women are to be seen and not heard, and hearing that every single day. And so now she's trying to play catch up, right? And how does she break that mentality that's been so ingrained in her that no, that active discouragement, that's not truth. You can do this and you should move forward and you should be heard as well. Yeah. How do people break that?
Once again, I have a speech that talks about this too. And it's based on the song "Roar" by Katy Perry, and that's exactly what the kind of the inspiration for it. Bite your tongue, hold your breath. You're not supposed to talk. That's not. If you're in a room, you're meant to be there. And, I know sometimes people are there as the token, maybe you're the token woman or you're the token person of color. I like to kind of reframe that as like, back in the day, and I'm dating myself, when they used to have arcade rooms, you needed a token to get some of those machines working. So if that's what I need to be to get this ship running, I'm fine with that. And I'm going to lean into that. I think it's really about your perspective is so valuable. Don't ever think that what you have to say doesn't have value and merit. And a lot of times you have to tell yourself that more than anybody else, is just reminding yourself that you have value, you have merit, and what you have to say needs to be said in that space. Just getting out of your own way. Is how you start, and it's a practice, it's a muscle that you have to exercise. Just like it took effort to kind of get you to the place where you wouldn't talk. It's going to take effort to get you talking and get you comfortable with that. And so just practice whenever you can.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And And kind of following on, Angela, if I can ask you, okay, let's say you've got the mentality now. It's, you're like, all right, I've got this, I can do this. But how do you actually go about building the skills and networking? What's your philosophy? And really any three of our panelists can talk about this, but I'll start with Angela, if that's okay. How do you actually practically go ahead and start building your skills and your network?
I think two things come to mind. The first one is your network. So for me, I have found that surrounding myself with women who say you can, and this is why you can, has really helped me kind of get over some of those feelings of, am I supposed to be in this space? Can I do this? Am I qualified to do this? So the network, and even if it's like, where do I even build that network? Or what do I think? I kind of think of it as, think of 3 people in the next quarter that you want to have coffee with, that you want to go to lunch with, and just ask them, hey, can we catch up? Or I'd like to connect on blank topic. And you'll find that some of those you're going to have coffee again with, and then others you're going to say, that was a great coffee, never again. And from that, you're building that network. And for me, it's really helped shift that mindset and reframe me on, I can do this, I will do it, here's how, and that network. The other part I would say, I just finished a book called Power Moves. I don't know if you're familiar with Career Contessa. It is an Instagram account, social media, but I find it hilarious and very relevant. But Power Moves, and kind of to Monica's point of every day doing something that is a power move. So it could be as much as sending that email and asking someone to go to coffee, or it could be saying, hey, I want to sit on this board. Those are power moves that you make every day when you make a decision that's bettering yourself. So I think of it as, what's that power move you're going to do today? Or what are 5 that you're like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm going to be proud because I did blank. So thinking about it that way too.
That's great. I love it. And I love some good, fresh Instagram content. Actually I started following Career Contessa after I chatted with you last time. So thank you for that. And it really sounds like, you're building habits, whether it's the mantra you have to tell yourself in your head or the actual physical doing to get good, right? Building those muscles. So in the few minutes we have left for the panel discussion, I want to ask all 3 of you, kind of a double question here. What do you wish you had in terms of whether it's a resource or mentality, whatever, when you first pursued an appointment? And what's your advice to any of the women who are listening today if they're on the fence about pursuing civic engagement? And we will start, Angela, with you.
2 things. The first one being, get involved, try it out. And I was telling Katie this ahead of time, but it's a 2-way street. So if you're not enjoying the appointment, if you're thinking this board wasn't for me, it's not a marriage. It is definitely one of, you can leave and there is someone else who's going to come in and potentially be a better fit for the position. So I always say, figure it out, feel if it feels like worthy of your time, because again, it's free work. So if you're going to get involved, test it out and know that if it's not a great fit, you move on and you try something else. The other one, it's so easy to get involved that once you are, you will slowly find others say, hey, you want to get involved with this? Because people are looking for people who want to be involved. So I would say test it out and don't hesitate, just jump in. And again, you're not married, you're just friends. You can leave at any time.
I love that. That's great. And you've had an experience, right, where that very thing happened to you, where you were appointed and you're like, oh, this is not for me. I don't love this. And now you're on a board that really feels like a good fit for what you're passionate about, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. Nkosi, how about you? What advice do you wish you had, or resource or tools when you were first appointed? And what advice would you give to any of the women or people listening today?
Well, for me, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I wish always that I had more knowledge. I always want more knowledge about what to expect. When engaging on the board, I want to know like all of the available boards, because sometimes some boards are more obvious than others. And then some are presented a little bit, at least in my case, a little bit later. I didn't know the resources for researching all of the different boards that were available and determining which was the best fit. And so that's one area. And then honestly, kind of reverberating off of what Angela was saying about getting involved. I wish I would have gotten involved a lot earlier instead of waiting until I was a little bit older. But for instance, I just, wasn't aware of it at the time, and how I could be engaged even more so at a young age. And so there's a young lady on our board who, has just been appointed as well. And I was thinking, goodness, I wasn't even thinking about boards at your age. And so that's something I think, just educating even the younger population in that sense, that they too can become involved.
Yeah, their voice matters. They're in this community too, right? And so we need their perspective.
Yeah,
it's great.
Now, did I miss one of your questions? I felt like there was a follow-up. Okay.
That was great. That was great. Thank you so much. And Monica, how about you? What advice do you wish you had? And what advice would you give?
I guess I want to ditto what both of them said. With having the knowledge, I think is what I wish I had. I'm better at it now, in that before I sign up for something, I've done research. Because I tend to veer towards the financial side. I'm more comfortable with budgets and finances and things like that. And a lot of times your fiduciary responsibility as a board member, depending on the budget of the organization, can be fairly significant. So kind of having some of that background, I think is helpful. Like I just recently was just looking online for free nonprofit finance courses. And it was just kind of, 1 or 2 hour little webinars, but just to familiarize myself with some of the other fiduciary responsibilities, specifically around nonprofits. And I think that's what I wish and I think, honestly, I wish for other people too, just like having some of that background knowledge, because I think a lot of times that imposter syndrome comes because you don't know. Well, a lot of times there are some things you can know in advance. And so just before you take that leap, getting to understand the organization, some of that background that's available to you, so that you just feel more confident and can move more confidently into that position. And then as far as the advice, as Angela said, network. Like it was so interesting when I was running for office. Anytime I had to meet with a group about something, either I knew I knew people in that group that I was talking to, or they knew someone who had worked with me closely. So I was never stepping into any space not completely unknown. And with a lot of boards and commissions, usually they first thing they do is ask for recommendations from the people who are already there. So if you're utilizing your network to identify those opportunities, and even if you say, hey, I'm interested in adding a board, to getting on a board, anybody have recommendations, you would probably get flooded with people saying, yes, we need, especially if you already have a reputation for being a hard worker, for being competent, though, for being passionate. People are interested in having those kind of people on boards. A lot of times it's just a matter of working your network and having a broad network. I mean, you can go deep into, if you have a passion for children and you want to do everything with children, that's great. But make sure not only you with like the parents and the kids, but also understand funders who are in that space. Also understand other organizations beside the one you might be passionate about who do similar services or maybe complementary services, because that just makes you a more well-rounded board member.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think each of you in our earlier conversations mentioned that either you wish you had, or eventually you did reach out to current board members and say, like Angela was saying, hey, can we grab a coffee? I want to learn more about what you actually do, what it actually takes, what's the time commitment, because every board is different. Every city, municipality, county, whatever level board you're interested in, they're all different. And so go ahead and reach out to the people who are already serving, because they can give you probably the best answers on what it's actually going to be like to be part of that service. Yeah. Well, that was so great. Thank you to all of the panelists. I'm going to keep you on the hook for a few more minutes because we've got a few questions that have come in through the chat. And so I'm going to just ask the question, and feel free, whomever of the three of you, to just jump in. So what advice do y'all have on balancing a position in state government with volunteer or appointed positions in your community? So I think the concern is about work being perceived as political. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
I can speak to that coming from a nonprofit background and certain areas where I didn't want it to cross in that space. I think for me, it was from the very beginning establishing with the board what the expectations were going to be and what I could give, knowing what my paid job was. So I think setting the expectations and or clarifying what those expectations are, and knowing that if it's your passion, you are a person first, you're an employee second. So, figure out what's going to work best for you and don't want to hinder your paid job. But at the same time, you're a person, and ideally the employer, the situation will want you to bring your whole self. So keeping those kinds of things in mind, I have always found helpful.
That's great. Thank you. And do either the other want to weigh in? No pressure. I can move on to another question if. I think, and one more we'll do from Helen. Does it take money to serve? Does it cost anything to be in service?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
No. I know, right? We're all surprised, but it doesn't cost anything. Really, it's time. And for my board, they know that we're volunteering. So they try to be very respectful of our time in the first place, but then there are also other opportunities that we can choose from to volunteer within the community. So it's really your time, your compassion, your willingness to help improve the lives of those within our community.
That's great. Thank you. Now, I assume it's probably a little different, Monica, if you are elected, but I'll pause that for now since we're kind of focused on the appointed, unless I'm wrong about that. I don't know if there's appointed positions that require funding. I don't think so.
I mean, I was just having this conversation last night with another person who's on a different educational board, and she had estimated with the time that she spends on the board, it's the equivalent to about $17,000 worth of time.
Yeah.
So no, you don't have to write a check to anything, but sometimes in order to be engaged, you can make the choice to, like if you're with a nonprofit, sometimes to be on a board of a nonprofit, they might have an expectation of raising a certain amount of money. So right. Obviously you're raising the money, so you don't necessarily have to write the check, but sometimes you might donate to whatever that effort might be. So I think that's the only thing that there's a cost. I mean, they don't make you write it if you want to be on this board, write a check, but there are some expectations for you bringing money into the organization. And it's good to make sure you're clear on those expectations up front.
Absolutely. Exactly. And it gets back to make sure you're networking, reaching out to the folks that are on that board and just start asking the questions because everyone here has experience that is valuable. And so I want to thank our panelists and Wendy for being here today. Y'all were incredible. You have inspired me. And so I'm hopeful that you guys are all inspired by the work that these women are doing. And if you are, and we would love to help you take the next step in your leadership journey. And so there's a couple ways that United We can help you do that. Number one, you can join the Appointments Project. That's what this is all about today. And what does that mean for you? By joining the Appointments Project Network, you'll get access to a toolkit for navigating the appointments process, and you'll be connected to this extensive network of women, events, and opportunities. Amy is posting the link in the chat for you. If you want to go ahead and take a minute now, you can share your information and sign up, or you can scan that QR code. If you're not quite ready, that's totally fine. We have some other events and trainings that I want to bring to your attention. So in addition to joining or not even if it's just subscribing to our newsletter, we invite you to sign up for our upcoming agilities training. This is, we had some questions about, how do you build the skills? This is a great place to start. It's a 30-minute overview of the Agile Work Profiler, which is an innovative tool designed by the DeBruce Foundation to help you discover more about yourself and where you might fit in, not just in civic engagement, but just in your life in general. Lastly, we would love your feedback. If you loved what you saw and heard today, or even if you didn't, please take a moment to fill out our survey if you would. It's going to pop up at the end of our conversation today, but also I believe Amy posted a link in the chat. We also will send it out via email. So lots of opportunities to provide us with your feedback. And please be honest, we want this to be a super valuable time for all of you since you've taken time out of your workday to be with us. Thanks again, Wendy, Nkosi, Monica, and Angela for being here, and to all of you for joining us today. We hope you will join the Appointments Project and the United We Network and share this with your friends. We will see you next time on Appointments Live. Bye, y'all.
Bye.